Hey there, this is Kamal, and in this video we're going to carry on with what we were learning in the previous video about Bootstrap. So let's get this started. Alright, so in the previous video we have seen some of the basic classes that you can use to apply some styling properties to your HTML elements. Apart from that, we have also seen how you can create containers and also how you can use the flex properties to align the elements inside your container. Now in this video, let's learn about the grid system that we have inside of Bootstrap. And also let's see how we can make our website mobile compatible as well. Okay, so let's remove everything that we have inside the body and let's create a simple h1 tag. So let's create that. Okay, so let's save that and let's open this using live server to see what we have. So right click anywhere on your screen and click on open with live server. Alright, so this is what we have for now. Now in order to actually make this mobile compatible, what we can do is that we can use some specific properties that we have inside of Bootstrap. These are called as breakpoints. So you can go to the Bootstrap documentation and you can search for breakpoints. So what the creators of Bootstrap have done is that they have categorized all the devices into these 5 specific types. So any device which has a width of 576 pixels or more but below 768 pixels, then that is considered to be a small device, that is represented using SM. Similarly, any device which has a width of 768 pixels but less than 992 pixels will be considered to be a medium device. And similarly for the large, extra large and double extra large as well. So we generally consider our mobile phones to be small and we consider our tablets to be medium devices and our laptops or desktops to be larger screens. And anything above that, like let's say a 4K monitor or something like that, that will be considered to be extra large. So we can actually use this particular tags to make our website more mobile responsive. So by that, what I mean is that, let me showcase that to you. So we have this heading, right? So let me give it a particular, let's say, margin. So what I can do is that I can type in a class and I can give it as a margin top of, let's say, 5. If I save that and go to the browser, we have a bit of spacing at the top. But if I right click here and if I go to inspect and go to the mobile version of this, so this is the mobile version of this, right? So let's say I want this margin to appear only in the mobile device and not in the larger screen. Then what I can do is that I can go back to our code and I can type in another class called as empty. Then I can give in a hyphen and then I can type in LG-0. This implies that I want it to have a margin of top 5 by default, but any screen which is larger than LG should have a margin of top 0. That means that any device exceeding LG. So if I give it as margin top LG 0, then it's gonna apply that to LG and XL and also double XL. In these 3 devices, the margin top will be 0. And for smaller devices like SM and MD, it will be 5. So if I go to the browser, so in this case, as you can see here in the mobile device, we have the margin, right? But if I go back to the normal screen, there is no margin at the top. So in that way, you can actually apply this LG or SM classes to make it more dynamic and responsive to any type of device. So now let's say you want to make this reverse. So you want this to apply only in a larger screen, but by default it should be 0. In that case, you can just type it as 0 by default. Then you can give it as margin top 5. And if I save that and go to the browser, as you can see in a larger screen, we have that. But if I go to the mobile version of this, then there will be no margin at the top. And one thing is that this LG can be applied to most of the properties inside of Bootstrap. So like let's say I can apply this to text center as well, or I can apply this to d-flex or any other property, right? So you can see that we already have that here, right? So all of this LG, MD and SM can be applied to any property inside of Bootstrap, and only some properties or some classes do not, accept that. But most of the classes accept them, and using those you can, apply properties based on the particular device that you want to apply it to. So these are called as media queries inside of CSS, and we generally do that through CSS as well. But if you do that through CSS, it gets a lot tedious task. So since we're already using Bootstrap, you can actually use this breakpoints to, make it more dynamic for any device that you want. So now let's try to understand what is the grid system that we have inside of Bootstrap. So what we generally do is that if we want to align something inside Bootstrap, we generally do that using the dflex, that is the flex properties, right? But the problem with flex properties is that if you apply the flex properties, then everything inside the container will be in a single line, but they won't have a fixed width. They will occupy the width which is given to that particular element. Like let's say I have a container here, and in that container, let's say I have an image and I also have a h1 tag. Then what will happen here is that if the image has a width of around 100 pixels or let's say 200 pixels, then the image will only occupy that width and it's not going to occupy more than that or less than that. And also the remaining will be occupied by the h1. But in some cases we don't want that to happen, and we want to specifically define how much it has to occupy inside the screen and how much of content has to be shown, right? In that case, if you want to align it in that way and also have more control over this, then you will be using Bootstrap Grid. So in order to actually understand Bootstrap Grid, let's go back to the documentation. In here you can search for grid. So that's going to show you the grid system that you have inside of Bootstrap. So what we have here is that in order to actually create the grid system, you need to first create a parent class, and that class is the row. So once you type in this division with the class of row, automatically the grid system will be initiated inside the container. Now inside this row you can create columns. Okay, so let me go back to the code and I'll simplify this for you. So we have the container, right? Now inside of this, in order to actually start the grid system, you can type in row, that is the row. And now inside of this you can type in the columns. So one thing that you have to understand about the grid system is that the whole row is divided into 12 columns. So in any row, you'll have 12 columns inside the grid system, and you can specify how many columns a particular division has to occupy. So let's say I want to create a division which is going to occupy the 12 columns completely. I can type it like this, like column-12, and that's going to create a division which is going to occupy the 12 columns. So let's give it a background color like BG dark, and let's give it a bit of margin to the top and bottom as well, which is going to be m/3, and in that let's type in the text column-12. Let's save that and go to the browser, and as you can see here we have this, right? Let's also give the text as white. So right now this is the whole container width. Okay, if I remove the container from here and if I save that and go to the browser, then as you can see here the row is stretching from left to right. But since we have the container and we have placed the row inside the container, then it's going to occupy only the width of the container. Alright, so now this is equivalent to the 12 columns, right? So this particular division is actually stretching to 12 columns. Let's say I want the same thing, but instead of actually occupying 12 columns, I want it to occupy only 11 columns. In that case, I can type it as column-11. And if I save that and go to the browser, as you can see, this particular division is occupying 11 columns. And there's one column left here, right? So there's some empty space here, that is the 12th column. So let's say I can type it as 6 here, and I can also do the same thing here as well. I can type it as 6, and if I save that and go to the browser, as you can see, this thing is occupying 6 columns and this thing is occupying 6. Let me change this to, let's say, danger instead of dark, and you'll be able to identify them clearly, right? So let's also remove this from here. And let's also remove this from here. So we have something like this. So the column starts from 1 to 12. So a division can occupy either 1 column, 2 columns, or 12 columns completely. So you can specify how many columns that particular division has to occupy, and that many number of columns that division is going to occupy inside your grid system. In this way, you can create multiple containers wherein you can place the elements, right? So let's say inside this first division, I can place in an image. Okay, so I can type in, like, let's say, an image, and let's say I want to use a dummy image. Alright, so I have given a dummy image source, and also I have added the class called as image-fluid. So this class is provided to us by Bootstrap, and by using this class, we can make the image, resize according to the parent tag, that is this particular division. Now, if I save this and go to the browser, you have a dummy image here, and also you also have the right column, right? So now I can actually type in some text here. So let's say I can create a h1, and let's say I can type in hi, and if I go to the browser, we'll have the text here. So in this way, you can create multiple divisions or containers in which you can place your content. But the main problem here is that if I go back to the browser and if I initiate the mobile screen once again, so let's go to the mobile layout, and right now as you can see, we are inside the Galaxy S9, but this thing is actually still occupying the full width, and it's actually taking 6 columns here and 6 columns here. But in some cases, the text will be quite large or the image will be very large, and in that case, you don't want it to occupy 6 and 6. Instead, we want it to be one below the other, right? So for that, what we can do is that let's remove this from here. Let's type it as column-12 so that it will occupy the full width. Now, what we want it to happen is that we want this particular thing to change to column 6 when it comes to larger screen, right? So I can type in column -lg, I can give it as 6. Once I do that and go back, as you can see here in a mobile screen, it is occupying 12 columns of width and it is one below the other. But if I go to a normal screen, that is a desktop screen, then it's going to occupy 6 columns of width and it's going to be one beside the other, right? So in this way, you can make this grid more dynamic and you can adjust that to any device, all right? So the only thing that you have to remember is that LG is used to represent larger screens, which involves laptop screens and desktops. And MD is actually used to represent mobile devices like, iPads or tablets or something like that. And SM is used to represent smaller screen sizes like phones or something like that. And XS is used to represent extra small devices like a mini phone, like a mini iPhone or something like that. Okay, so these are the main properties that you generally use. If you want, you can go with XL and XXL as well. Those are for larger screens like 4K monitors or something like that. But we don't generally use that in our day-to-day basis. Okay. Alright, so now we are done with the basic things that you need to know inside of Bootstrap to get started with creating your own projects. So let's now see how we can actually create a simple website as well using Bootstrap. So for that, let's remove everything that we have inside of our body and let's go to the Bootstrap documentation. And in here, the first thing that you're going to use is the navigation bar. Alright, so for any website that we want to create, we generally have a navigation bar, right? So you can go to the documentation and you can search for nav bar. That's going to be the navigation bar. So this is a basic navigation bar that you generally get. So these are snippets that you can actually place inside your code. So if you want, you can actually copy this as well. So let me copy this and let's go back to our body. Inside our body, I'm going to place this. And if I go to the browser, as you can see, we have a navigation bar, and it is that easy to actually include a navigation bar as well. And the main benefit of using a Bootstrap navigation bar is that if I go to the mobile version of this, then it's going to minimize itself and you'll have a button here. And if you click on that, that's going to have a drop down showcasing the navigation panel, right? So this is something that is given to you by Bootstrap. You're not creating that manually. Okay, so this functionality and everything, all of these animations are given to you by Bootstrap itself. So now let's go back, and in the larger screen, you'll have the normal layout. Okay. Apart from this, if you want, you can also go with a darker variant as well. So if you scroll down, there's a lot of navigation items that you can, optimize and make it look good. So there's also one here where you can actually change the color scheme as well. So there's a class that you have to give here called as this. So let's copy this particular class. Let's go back, and inside here, for the top right, you have the navigation, right? Inside that, we have these classes. So let me remove this. Let's paste it here. You don't need the nav bar. Let's save that and go to the browser. And as you can see here, the navigation bar has changed to dark. That is because we've given the background as dark. So it's going to be BG dark. This is going to actually make the text white. So this is something given to us by Bootstrap. This is a navigation bar class. Okay. So you don't need to understand what's going on here completely. The only thing that you need to worry about are three main things. The first one is your brand. So we have this navigation text, right? So this is what is being shown here. If I remove this and if I place animation and I can type in some logo, let's see. So let's download a logo first. Alright, so what I've done is that I've downloaded a logo and I've included that inside our project structure. So we have a logo here. So I'll include that here. I can type in logo.jpeg, and if I save that and go to the browser, we have a logo. But the thing is that this is really large, right? So we need to minimize this. So for that, we have a HTML property that we can actually use called as width. So I can type that in and I can give in the number of pixels it has to occupy. Let's say I can give it as 60 pixels. So it's going to be 60 number. And if I save that and go to the browser, you'll have the logo in a reduced format. Okay. Now, apart from this brand, what you have here is a button. All right. So this button is what is actually being visible to us in a mobile screen. So if you go to mobile screen as well, as you can see, there's a button here, right? For the drop down navigation, right? So this button that you're seeing here is only active in the mobile screen, and that button is this thing. So this is going to make, that functionality that you're seeing here. This animation is being done through this button. So apart from these two elements, you have the main navigation content. So if I go back, you have these, right? And the search bar as well. All of that is present inside this particular division. So what I'll do now is I'll minimize everything except the first home tag, and let's, remove that completely. So let's remove all the list items except the first one. And if I save that, you'll have something like this. Now let's copy and paste this 2 more times. Let's change this to, let's say, a blog, and let's change this to contact or something like that. If I save that and go to the browser, this is what we have. And one more thing is that there's actually a class given to this link by default that is called as active. So I'll be removing that class. So if I remove that and go back to the browser, then the links are going to have a light gray color to it. But if I hover over this, then that's going to be highlighted, right? So that particular property is present inside the navigation as well. And if you give it as, let's say, active, so I can type in as active. And if you save that and go to the browser, then as you can see here, this is highlighted, right? So this represents that this particular page is active. So if you want, you can add that to make this highlighted. Now, apart from that, as you can see here, we have a home page, a blog, and a contact. But the thing is that we don't have a blog page and a contact page, right? So let's say we want to link to this blog page. What we can do is that we can actually create a blog page inside of this. So let's say I can type in blog.html, and that's going to create a blog.html page. Now I can type that here inside the href attribute, and it's going to link to the blog.html page. If I go to the browser once again, and if I click on blog, as you can see, we are being redirected to the blog.html page. Alright, if I go back, we are inside the index.html page. And one more thing, if you remove this and type in slash, then if you go back to the browser, if I click on home, then we'll be redirected to slash, right? So there's nothing inside the URL except slash, and that slash represents the home page. So if there's nothing given inside your URL bar, then it's going to automatically open the index page, as that will be your default home page. Okay, so if you want to redirect to the home page, you can give it as slash. So for the logo as well, I can remove the href from here, and if I type in slash, go to the browser, and now if I click on the logo, it'll automatically go back to the home page. All right, so this can be useful when you're trying to redirect users back to the home page. Now apart from this, let's say we want to create the footer as well. So let's create that. Let's go back to this Bootstrap documentation. Now apart from this documentation, you can also skim through the examples. So if I scroll to the top, there's an example section as well. If I go to the examples, there are a lot of examples that you can actually skim through, and you can copy and paste that code to actually add those particular properties inside your web page as well. Like we have a section of nav bars. So we have all the navigation bars, which you can actually create that and add it to your own website as well. Apart from that, we also have headers as well. So these are the headers that you can actually create for your website. So what you can do is that you can right click here and go to view page source, and in here you'll have the whole HTML code of this particular website. So let's say I want to go with this third one. I can go here and I can search for this. So this should be the first one, so this will be the second one, and this is going to be the third one, right? So I can copy that third example from here, this particular code, and I can place it inside my own website, and that's going to be applied. All right, similarly I can apply any hero content or features or sidebars or something like that. But for now, let's actually create a footer as well. So if I scroll here, there should be a section of footers. So yeah, we have it here. If I open this, you'll have a footer, right? So these are all the footers that you can actually create. Let's say I want to go with the second version. So I can right click here, click on view page source, and let's copy the second one. So you have to match this with this to understand what is the code. So like in this case, you have 3 icons, right? Twitter, Insta, and Facebook. So if I go to the source code, and as you can see here, so we have a section which has these 3 things like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. That means this is the code for the second footer, right? So I can copy that and I can go back, and if I minimize this navigation, below this, let's place the footer. If I save that and go to the browser once again, then as you can see here, we have the footer, but the icons are not visible. All right, that is because we don't actually have these icons inside our own website. So in order to actually make this visible, you have to use the font awesome icon library, through which we can actually add the icons. So we'll see all of that in the next video, and we'll also see how we can populate this and add a lot more content between the header and the footer. And we're also going to be creating a hero section, and also let's say a section wherein you can actually view the posts as well, and something like that. Okay, so we'll be creating that in the next video. Alright, so before closing this off, I just wanted to say that this video was made in collaboration with packetcode. So packetcode is a training and placement company located in Hyderabad, And these videos were specifically made for the job guarantee training program that they have going on right now. And that is the Full Stack Java Developer program. So apart from these free video lectures, they also have some premium content as well, like lecture notes, practice and test papers for you to get better at your core concepts. And they also have offline as well as online classes for this program. And they also conduct multiple demo sessions as well. So you can attend any of these demo sessions and understand the things they are teaching as well as their training approach firsthand. So if you're interested, I've provided the website link in the description down below. You can go there and check them out. So that's it for this video, guys. I hope you have liked what you've seen till now. If you did, then please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe as well. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.